Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And as Verizon is trying to make a big splash into this summer, this upcoming summer, recently, for those of you who remember the red hot deals, right? Verizon was advertising that go-to market marketing strategy. And now it's start the summer on us. So it's another bundling opportunity where you can bundle several products and get them all on Verizon. Plus, you can get up to a $200 gift card when switching to select Verizon 5G Home, LTE Home, and Fios internet plans. And then it's all broken down here. You can see pick your dream team bundle, and you can get up to $2,000 in value. You can see Apple, Google, Samsung, and then there's more. You guys can check that out in the link to this article in the description. Now, I wanted to talk a bit more about Verizon and what they have accomplished in the past and where they're heading, because I think it goes missing sometimes for a lot of people. I think if we evaluate all the other carriers and the industry and how the industry was and where it's going and just looking at everything, I think Verizon, in all honesty, has been the most consistent, right? They laid the blueprint, the foundation for LTE, and they continued to build that out as everyone else was confused and trying to figure out if it was WiMAX or HSPA, for those of you who remember. Verizon went with LTE first, and they had a massive lead, and then they purchased AWS, and then we got XLTE. And even though they may have not made the best possible decisions during that time, right? Some people have an opinion that densifying deep into the urban core with small cells wasn't the right approach. Some tell me Verizon should have added more rooftop macros in that urban environment, where that's what T-Mobile chose to do in many cases. They densified with the macro. Verizon chose small cells. Whatever the case, it still works, right? So that's why I think Verizon has been the most consistent looking at everything, right? Even now, where they don't have C-band deployed or enough scale on the C-band, right, where sites are missing, it can be a bit iffy and tricky on the Verizon network, right? Just being honest, right? I've seen people say, "Hey, look, I'm traveling on this route, and it's great when it's on C-band, but as soon as I drop off a C-band, the performance just drastically changes." And that's the results of Verizon not having enough bandwidth during LTE, right? I'm willing to admit it. Verizon themselves, they've been willing to admit it. They've admitted it publicly. They didn't have the most amount of spectrum during LTE, right? If you look at the customer count total on postpaid, how many customers Verizon had due to them having that best LTE network, right? Everyone shifted towards Verizon. And back then, you really needed to be on Verizon. I mean, T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, they could not offer a similar experience in any way, shape, or form during that time. You needed to be on Verizon to get that data experience. So they've accumulated a lot of customers during that time, and it led to them having the least amount of spectrum per customer. That's just what happened, right? We're calling it how it is, and that's how it was during that time. Now, Verizon made no excuses. They continued to build. They continued to densify. They added more tower sites by me. They did it in the urban cores. They did it in a lot of markets because they've had the most amount of customers during LTE, and that carried into now what we know as 5G. So the most consistency, right? As everyone got sidetracked, at some point in time, companies get sidetracked, right? AT&T lost heavily. I think if we're talking about consistency and losing focus, I got to say AT&T was the worst. The media deals, them trying to get into fiber at that time and really trying to get the jump start on getting the UVerse upgraded to fiber and then doing the DSL and the copper thing, and then getting into this media conglomerate and then going through the courts with Time Warner and then having to operate DirecTV. It was AT&T just lost so much focus, and I'm telling you guys, only what we know on the surface. I'm telling you, there were probably so many network plans that got canceled during that media stage of the business that they just completely lost themselves, in my opinion. I mean, the C-RAN small cell plans that got canceled, I'm sure there was a ton of new site builds that got canceled during that time that were desperately needed. So AT&T by far lost the most amount of focus. But even T-Mobile, they're getting a bit sidetracked now, right? They were pure wireless with no plans of pivoting. But now we're starting to see T-Mobile lose lose a bit focus, right? They have some leadership shuffling going on. They got fiber going on, although it's not like massive, but they have some shift in focus, right? So Verizon, I think they have been able to balance this the best, right? They've always been investing in Fios, but it never really caused them to lose much track on wireless. And even now with Frontier, I just don't think it's going to cause Verizon to lose much focus on wireless, if any. Right? I think it'll be a very smooth transition, and I think Verizon will continue to be stellar on the network side as they move through that transition. I don't think Verizon is ever going to go through a period and stage where, oh, we're going to cancel these small cells, we're going to cancel new site builds, we're going to cancel this, we're going to cancel that. No. In fact, Verizon continued to invest and accelerate, right? The big project that many thought may cause them to lose focus was the One Fiber, right? That was separate, right? That was separate from fiber to the premise. The One Fiber project, I think, was scheduled to be like in the top 76, 78 markets. That was strictly a fiber to the cell site, and to the small cell, whichever. That's what that project was. And that really helped Verizon boost its capacity at the cell site. I remember here, I mean, some of these cell sites were literally bandwidth capped at the fiber level, 100 megabits down, 100 megabits up. And they would not pay for a single megabit more. That, of course, has changed now because El Paso, Texas has One Fiber just about at all cell sites now. And that project, they're still adding more fiber to cell sites. Or they have to temporarily put microwave backhaul until they can get their own fiber to the cell, right? So they're still working that project. But I feel it just hasn't caused them to lose focus. Yes, the C-band deployment is not at the type of scale that many would like, especially if it's affecting you directly in your market, where if a site doesn't have C-band, they don't perform that great. I understand that very well. But end of this year, next year, and then the year after, that will make a lot more sense. And Verizon at that point should have a large amount of material scale on the C-band, right? Because right now, I don't want to say the numbers are being fudged, but there's a lot of inner cell out there where they're covering C-band to one area where the cell site really doesn't have it, but it's connecting to it from another cell site. And I'm sure for most of you who are, testing the networks and wireless enthusiasts, which most of you are on the channel, have seen that, where you're in an area where the cell site doesn't have C-band, but your phone is picking up C-band from another cell site, right? So within this year, next year, the year after, that's going to go away, right? So naturally, all the sites are going to have continuous C-band. And that's going to make Verizon's network that much better. And I think it's going to be scary, right? If you combine that with the LTE densification that they had to go through because they had the least amount of bandwidth per customer, right? They had to go through that. And then the small cell project, they went big. Like in a place like Chicago, they added thousands of small cells for the densification, where some have told me that they wish Verizon would have densified more using the macro. But just imagine all of those small cells getting C-band at some point, right? It's going to take time. You have to work through that. But those are going to get C-band. And then you look at all the DAS systems that are going to get upgraded to C-band that Verizon had to add, right? Because they're the biggest premium player. They want to make sure that all of their assets are up to par, right? So they're going to go through that. And then the tower sites are still going to get more C-band. So Verizon is gradually, slowly going through that in stages. The pace of the build is great. It's at a great pace. Verizon could accelerate at any time if they choose to, but they accelerated early on. For those of you who remember the extra spend on C band, and now they just have to go through that the time, right. They have a capex of 17.5 to 18.5 billion. They just have to build. They just have to continue to build, one side at a time, and eventually the most of the concerns will fade out. They will fade out, and people will be happy, again, with Verizon at any scale, any type of scale, right? As long as they continue to put C-band on sites and on the C-RAN small cell, the network will be the best. I've said it in plenty of previous videos, even backtracking last year, the year before last, the first year they got C-band. I always maintained that Verizon will have the best 5G network. And for me, that's not changing. Until I see something drastically change in the industry where I can pinpoint and say, okay, this carrier is really going to take that top spot, it's going to be Verizon. And that's because Verizon has been the most consistent. They've been able to balance the business and not get sidetracked as much as what I've seen with especially AT&T, and what we're seeing with T-Mobile, where they are getting a little sidetracked with everything in the business. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. Also share this new Make Summer on Us from Verizon. I think Verizon is in a great position. They have more work to do. I think we all acknowledge that. There is the low band situation where some have said that Verizon really needs a clean low band channel for 5G. I do agree with that. But Verizon won't make excuses. They didn't make excuses when they had the least amount of spectrum per customer, and they won't make excuses now. They will figure it out. They will deploy so many towers that, for them at least, low band will become irrelevant, where they can say, hey, we can keep you on mid band and offer you the same experience as we would on low band with calling and everything penetration indoors, because we've built so much densification, right? So Verizon is always looking for solutions, better premium network that will never change, right? So Verizon, in my opinion, has been the most consistent carrier over the years, and I don't think that's going to change with 5G. They just started late, right? Bought the C-band, and the FAA made a big deal about it. They couldn't deploy. It was just a mess, right? They only had the A block cleared for the first initial deployment. They needed B and C. They had to wait for that. I mean, there were just a lot of roadblocks, a lot of red tape that Verizon did work through. And now, as they remain as consistent as they have been, you guys will see them deploy more C-band this year, more C-band next year, and more C-band the year after, which will eventually result in a great, great, great network. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.